Imagine this. It's a rainy evening in New York City, the kind of night where the streets glisten under the neon lights and the hum of the city feels both alive and distant. A woman steps into a taxi, her designer heels clicking against the wet pavement, her face a mask of impatience and entitlement. She's running late, and her frustration is palpable. The taxi driver, a quiet man with a weathered face and tired eyes, greets her politely, but she doesn't even acknowledge him. Instead, she barks her destination and immediately starts complaining about the traffic, the weather, and of course the driver's speed. What happens next is something no one could have predicted. This isn't just a story about a rude passenger and a humble taxi driver. It's a story about secrets, consequences, and a bombshell revelation that will leave you questioning everything you think you know about people. If you've ever been curious about what happens when arrogance meets karma, or if you've ever wondered how a single moment can change lives forever, then you're in the right place. This story is for anyone who's ever felt underestimated, overlooked, or pushed to their limit. It's for anyone who's ever wondered what lies beneath the surface of the people we encounter every day. By the end of this video, you'll get the answers you're looking for, answers that will shock you, move you, and maybe even change the way you see the world. Let me ask you something. Have you ever been in a situation where someone treated you like you were invisible? Like your feelings, your time, your very existence didn't matter? If you have, then you're going to connect with this story on a deep, emotional level. Because this isn't just about a taxi driver and a rude passenger. It's about power dynamics, hidden truths, and the unexpected ways life can humble us. It's about the moments that force us to confront who we really are and who we could become. Now, let me introduce you to the key players in this drama. First, there's her. Let's call her Jessica. She's the kind of woman who's used to getting her way. She's successful, attractive, and confident to the point of arrogance. She's the type of person who believes the world owes her something, and she's not afraid to demand it. Then there's him, the taxi driver. His name is Sam, and he's the polar opposite of Jessica. He's quiet, unassuming, and has spent most of his life flying under the radar. He's the kind of person people overlook, the kind of person who blends into the background. But as you're about to see, there's more to Sam than meets the eye. The tension between these two characters is electric from the very beginning. Jessica's impatience and entitlement clash with Sam's calm demeanor, creating a dynamic that's both uncomfortable and fascinating to watch. But here's the thing. This isn't just a story about conflict. It's a story about revelation. Because as the night unfolds, something happens that neither Jessica nor Sam could have anticipated. A secret is revealed, a bombshell that changes everything. I'm not going to spoil it for you, but I will say this. What happens next will keep you on the edge of your seat. It's the kind of twist that makes you rethink everything you thought you knew about the characters and their motivations. It's the kind of moment that stays with you long after the story is over. And that's exactly why you need to keep watching. Because this isn't just a story, it's an experience. So, what's the bombshell? What could possibly make Jessica, a woman who seems to have it all, stop in her tracks? What could make Sam, a man who's spent his life in the shadows, step into the spotlight? The answers are coming. Jessica had always been a woman who thrived on control. Her life, meticulously curated, was a testament to her relentless ambition and unyielding determination. She was the kind of person who climbed the corporate ladder not just with skill, but with a calculated ruthlessness that left little room for empathy. Her recent promotion to senior vice president at one of Manhattan's most prestigious marketing firms was no accident. It was the result of years of strategic maneuvering, late nights, and a willingness to step on anyone who stood in her way. But success, as Jessica was beginning to discover, came at a cost. Her relationships were strained, her friendship superficial, and her personal life a series of fleeting moments that never quite added up to something meaningful. She had everything she thought she wanted, yet there was an emptiness she couldn't quite shake, a nagging feeling that something was missing. The night she stepped into Sam's taxi was no ordinary night. Jessica had just come from a high-stakes meeting with a major client, one that had not gone as planned. The client, a tech mogul with a reputation for being difficult, had abruptly canceled their contract, leaving Jessica scrambling to salvage the deal. Her boss, a man who rarely showed emotion, had made it clear that this was a make-or-break moment for her career. The pressure was mounting, and Jessica could feel the walls closing in. She had spent the entire day putting out fires, managing her team's panic, and trying to maintain the facade of control that had always been her trademark. By the time she hailed Sam's cab, she was exhausted, frustrated, and on the verge of snapping. Sam, on the other hand, was having a night that was as ordinary as they come. He had been driving his taxi for nearly 2 decades, navigating the chaotic streets of New York with a quiet efficiency that came from years of experience. He knew the city like the back of his hand, the shortcuts, the hidden gems, the places to avoid. But what he didn't know was that tonight would be different. Tonight, his path would cross with Jessica's in a way that would change both of their lives forever. Sam was a man of few words, a trait that had served him well in his line of work. He had seen it all, the good, the bad, and the downright bizarre. But nothing could have prepared him for what was about to happen. As Jessica slid into the back seat of Sam's cab, she barely glanced at him. Her mind was elsewhere, consumed by the events of the day and the mounting pressure of her career. She barked her destination, a high-end apartment building on the Upper East Side, and immediately pulled out her phone, scrolling through emails and firing off responses with a speed that bordered on manic. Sam, accustomed to dealing with all kinds of passengers, simply nodded and started the meter. He could sense her tension, the way her energy filled the small space of the cab like a storm cloud ready to burst. But he said nothing, focusing instead on the road ahead. The drive started off quietly, the only sounds the rhythmic swish of the windshield wipers and the occasional honk of a horn. But it didn't take long for Jessica's frustration to boil over. The traffic was worse than usual, a result of the rain and a minor accident up ahead. As the minutes ticked by and the cab inched forward at a snail's pace, Jessica's patience wore thin. She began muttering under her breath, her words sharp and laced with irritation. "This is ridiculous," she snapped, finally breaking the silence. "Do you even know where you're going? I have an important meeting in the morning, and I don't have time for this." Sam, ever the professional, remained calm. "I'm doing my best, Mom," he replied, his voice steady. "The traffic is bad tonight, but we'll get there as soon as we can." His calm demeanor only seemed to fuel Jessica's anger. She leaned forward, her eyes narrowing as she glared at him through the rearview mirror. "Your best isn't good enough," she shot back. "I'm paying you to get me there on time, not to sit in traffic all night. If you can't handle the job, maybe you should find another line of work." The words hung in the air, heavy and sharp. Sam's hands tightened on the steering wheel, but he said nothing. He had dealt with difficult passengers before, but there was something about Jessica's tone, her sheer entitlement, that struck a nerve. Still, he kept his composure, focusing on the road and the task at hand. But as the drive continued, something began to shift. The tension in the cab grew thicker, the silence more charged. And then, out of nowhere, Sam spoke. His voice was quiet, almost hesitant, but there was a weight to his words that made Jessica pause. "You know," he said, his eyes meeting hers in the rearview mirror, "not everything is as it seems." The statement was cryptic, almost ominous, and it caught Jessica off guard. She opened her mouth to respond, but before she could say anything, Sam continued. "People like you," he said, his tone softening. "You think you have it all figured out. But sometimes, the people you overlook, the ones you dismiss, are the ones who hold the key to everything." Jessica stared at him, her mind racing. What was he talking about? Was this some kind of metaphor, or was there something more to his words? She wanted to dismiss him, to brush off his comment as the ramblings of a tired cab driver. But there was something in his eyes, something that made her hesitate. As the cab finally pulled up to her building, Jessica felt a strange mix of emotions: relief, curiosity, and a lingering sense of unease. She handed Sam the fare, her movements quick and mechanical, but as she reached for the door handle, he spoke again. This time, his words were even more unexpected. "You might want to check your email," he said, his voice calm but firm. "There's something you need to see." Jessica froze, her hand hovering over the door handle. What was he talking about? How could he possibly know anything about her email? She turned to look at him, but he was already focused on the road, his expression unreadable. The encounter left Jessica unsettled, the cryptic words replaying in her mind as she stepped out of the cab and into the rain. She told herself it was nothing, just the ramblings of a man who had spent too many hours behind the wheel. But as she entered her apartment and opened her laptop, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. And then she saw an email from an unknown sender, its subject line simple but chilling: "You don't know who you're dealing with." Her heart raced as she clicked on the message, her eyes scanning the words on the screen. What she read next would send her world spiraling out of control. But that's a story for the next part of this video. Because what Jessica discovered in that email was just the beginning. The bombshell Sam had hinted at was far bigger, far more shocking than she could have ever imagined. And as the pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place, Jessica would realize that the man she had dismissed as just a cab driver was anything but ordinary. So, what was in the email? Who was Sam, really? And what did he know that could turn Jessica's life upside down? The answers are coming, but you'll have to keep watching to find out. Because this story is far from over. Jessica's hands trembled as she stared at the email on her laptop screen, the words blurring as her mind raced to make sense of what she was reading. The message was short, but its implications were anything but. It referenced details about her life, her career, her recent promotion, even her strained relationship with her younger sister, Emily, that no stranger should have known. The sender's identity was hidden behind a string of random characters, and the tone of the email was cold, almost clinical. "You think you're untouchable," it read. "But you're not. You've made enemies, Jessica. And they're closer than you think." She felt a chill run down her spine, the weight of the words settling over her like a dark cloud. Who could have sent this? And why? Her mind immediately went to Sam, the taxi driver, and his cryptic warning. Was this what he had been hinting at? Was he somehow involved? Before she could process the email further, her phone buzzed on the table beside her. It was a text from Emily, her sister. The message was brief, but it sent a fresh wave of unease through Jessica. "We need to talk. It's urgent." Jessica frowned. She and Emily hadn't spoken in weeks, not since their last argument over Jessica's relentless work schedule and her inability to make time for family. Emily had accused her of being selfish, of caring more about her career than the people who loved her. Jessica had brushed it off at the time, too focused on her own goals to entertain what she saw as petty drama. But now, with the email still glaring at her from the screen and Sam's words echoing in her mind, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. She called Emily, her fingers tapping nervously against the edge of her desk. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times before her sister finally picked up. "Emily," Jessica said, her voice sharper than she intended. "What's going on? Why did you text me?" There was a pause on the other end of the line, and when Emily finally spoke, her voice was uncharacteristically quiet. "I got something in the mail today," she said. "Something weird. I didn't know what to do with it, so I thought I should tell you." Jessica's stomach dropped. "What do you mean weird?" she asked, her mind already racing with possibilities. Emily hesitated, then said, "It's a letter. It's addressed to me, but it's about you. It says you're in danger, Jess. And not just you, me too." Jessica's breath caught in her throat. This couldn't be a coincidence. First the email, now this letter. Someone was targeting her, and they were pulling her sister into it. "What does the letter say exactly?" she demanded, her voice rising. Emily's response was hesitant, as if she were afraid to say the words out loud. "It says that if you don't stop what you're doing, something bad is going to happen. To both of us." It's signed with just a symbol, a circle with a line through it. "I don't know what it means, but it's freaking me out." Jessica's mind raced. A circle with a line through it? She had seen that symbol before, but where? And what did it mean? She tried to push the thought aside, focusing instead on the immediate problem. "Where's the letter now?" she asked. "I need to see it." Emily's voice wavered. "I have it here, but…" "Jess, I'm scared. What if this is serious? What if someone's really after us?" Jessica wanted to reassure her sister, to tell her it was just a prank or a misunderstanding. But deep down, she knew better. The email, the letter, Sam's warning, it was all connected. And whoever was behind it wasn't playing games. "I'll come over," she said, her tone firm. "Stay where you are, and don't talk to anyone until I get there." She hung up before Emily could respond, her mind already spinning with questions. Who could be doing this? And why? Was it someone from work, a disgruntled colleague, or a rival trying to sabotage her? Or was it something deeper, something tied to her past that she had long since buried? As she grabbed her coat and headed for the door, her phone buzzed again. This time, it was a notification from her security system. Someone had tried to access her building's parking garage using her keycard. The attempt had been unsuccessful, but the timing was too suspicious to ignore. Jessica felt a surge of panic, her heart pounding as she hurried to the elevator. She needed to get to Emily, to figure out what was going on before it was too late. But as she stepped out into the rain-soaked street, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. The cab ride to Emily's apartment was a blur, the city lights streaking past as Jessica's mind raced. She replayed the events of the night over and over, trying to piece together the puzzle. Sam's cryptic words, the email, the letter, the security breach, it all pointed to something bigger, something darker than she was prepared to face. And then there was the symbol, a circle with a line through it. Why did it feel so familiar? When she finally arrived at Emily's building, her sister was waiting in the lobby, her face pale and drawn. She handed Jessica the letter without a word, her hands shaking. Jessica unfolded it carefully, her eyes scanning the neatly typed words. The message was similar to the email she had received, but there was an added layer of menace. "You've been warned," it read. But you didn't listen. Now it's too late. The circle is closing, and there's no way out. Jessica's blood ran cold. What did it mean? And who was behind it? As she stood there, clutching the letter, a new thought occurred to her. What if Sam wasn't just a cab driver? What if he was part of this? Or worse, what if he was the one pulling the strings? The idea seemed far-fetched, but nothing about this situation made sense anymore. She needed answers, and she needed them fast. But as she looked at Emily's frightened face, she realized something else. This wasn't just about her anymore. Whatever was happening, it had dragged her sister into it, and that made it personal. The stakes had just gotten higher, and the mystery had deepened. Who was targeting Jessica and Emily? What did they want? And how far were they willing to go to get it? The answers were out there, but finding them would mean diving into a world of secrets, lies, and danger. And as Jessica stood there in the dimly lit lobby, the rain pounding against the windows, she knew one thing for certain: this was only the beginning. But what happens next? Who sent the letter? What does the symbol mean? And is Sam really just a cab driver, or is he something more? The answers are coming, but you'll have to keep watching to find out. Because this story is far from over, and the twists are just getting started. Jessica sat on Emily's couch, the letter clutched tightly in her hands, her mind spinning as she tried to make sense of the chaos unfolding around her. The symbol, a circle with a line through it, was still nagging at her, a faint memory tugging at the edges of her consciousness. She was so consumed by her thoughts that she barely noticed when Emily returned from the kitchen, holding 2 steaming mugs of tea. Her sister's face was still pale, her eyes wide with fear, but there was something else there now, a flicker of hesitation, as if she were holding something back. Jessica didn't notice at first, too focused on the letter and the growing sense of dread that had settled over her like a heavy blanket. But then Emily spoke, her voice trembling as she set the mugs down on the coffee table. "Jess," she said, her tone hesitant, "there's something I need to tell you." Jessica looked up, her brow furrowing as she studied her sister's face. "What is it?" she asked, her voice sharp with impatience. Emily hesitated, her hands twisting nervously in her lap. "It's about the letter," she said slowly. "And about Dad." Jessica froze, her breath catching in her throat. Their father had died 5 years ago, a sudden heart attack that had left the family reeling. He had been a quiet man, a former accountant who had always seemed more comfortable with numbers than with people. Jessica had loved him, but their relationship had been distant, strained by her relentless ambition and his inability to understand her drive. What could he possibly have to do with this? Emily took a deep breath, her eyes darting to the letter in Jessica's hands. "Before he died," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "Dad told me something. Something he made me promise never to tell you." Jessica's heart began to race, a cold knot of dread forming in her stomach. "What are you talking about?" she demanded, her voice rising. Emily flinched but pressed on. He said there were things in his past that he wasn't proud of. Things he had done to protect us. He said if anyone ever came asking questions, if we ever got a letter or a message with that symbol, it meant they had found him and they were coming for us. Jessica stared at her sister, her mind reeling. "What are you saying?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Who's coming for us? And what did Dad do?" Emily shook her head, tears welling in her eyes. "I don't know," she said. "He wouldn't tell me. He just said to be careful, to trust no one. And then he made me swear never to tell you. He said it was better if you didn't know." Jessica felt a surge of anger, hot and sharp, cutting through the fear. "Better if I didn't know," she snapped. Emily, if this is about our safety, I have a right to know. But before Emily could respond, there was a knock at the door. Both sisters froze, their eyes locking in a moment of shared panic. The knock came again, louder this time, more insistent. Jessica stood, her heart pounding as she moved toward the door. Wait, Emily whispered, her voice frantic. Jess, don't, but it was too late. Jessica peered through the peephole, her breath catching in her throat when she saw who was standing on the other side. It was Sam, the taxi driver. Her mind raced as she yanked the door open, her anger and fear colliding in a single explosive moment. What are you doing here? She demanded, her voice shaking with a mixture of rage and disbelief. Sam stood there, his expression calm but his eyes filled with a quiet intensity that made Jessica's skin crawl. I told you, he said, his voice steady. Not everything is as it seems. Jessica stared at him, her mind spinning as she tried to make sense of his words. What do you want? She asked, her voice rising. What does any of this have to do with you? Sam hesitated, his gaze flicking past her to where Emily stood, frozen in the doorway of the living room. It's not about me, he said finally. It's about your father and the people he used to work for. Jessica felt the ground shift beneath her, the world tilting on its axis as his words sank in. What are you talking about? She asked, her voice barely a whisper. Sam's expression softened, but there was a hardness in his eyes that sent a chill down her spine. Your father wasn't just an accountant, he said. He was part of something bigger. Something dangerous. And now that he's gone, they think you know his secrets. Jessica's mind raced, the pieces of the puzzle finally starting to fall into place. The email, the letter, the symbol, it all made sense now. But before she could respond, Sam stepped closer, his voice dropping to a low, urgent whisper. You need to listen to me, he said. They're watching you. They've been watching you for a long time. And if you don't do exactly what I say, they're going to come for you and for Emily. Jessica felt a surge of panic, her heart pounding as she looked from Sam to her sister and back again. Who are they? She asked, her voice trembling. Sam's expression darkened, his jaw tightening as he glanced over his shoulder as if expecting someone to appear at any moment. I can't tell you that, he said. Not here. Not now. But if you want to survive this, you need to trust me. Jessica stared at him, her mind reeling. Trust him? The man who had driven her home in a taxi, who had spoken in riddles and now stood in her sister's apartment, revealing secrets about her father that she had never known? It was too much, too fast. But as she looked into his eyes, she realized something. She didn't have a choice. Whoever they were real. And they were coming. But what happens next? Who is Sam, really? And what secrets did Jessica's father take to his grave? The answers are closer than ever, but the danger is growing. And as the circle closes, Jessica and Emily will have to decide who they can trust and how far they're willing to go to survive. The twists are just getting started, and the stakes have never been higher. Keep watching, because this story is far from over. Jessica stood frozen in the doorway, her mind racing as Sam's words echoed in her ears. The weight of what he had just revealed about her father, about the danger they were in, felt like a physical force pressing down on her, making it hard to breathe. She glanced back at Emily, who was still standing in the living room, her face pale and her hands clenched into fists at her sides. The fear in her sister's eyes was unmistakable, and it only deepened the knot of dread tightening in Jessica's chest. She turned back to Sam, her voice low and urgent. If you know something, you need to tell me everything. Right now. No more riddles. No more cryptic warnings. I need to know what we're dealing with." Sam's expression was unreadable, but there was a flicker of something in his eyes, regret, maybe, or guilt. He glanced over his shoulder again, as if checking to make sure they were still alone, then stepped closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Your father wasn't just an accountant," he said again, his tone heavy with meaning. "He worked for a group, a powerful, dangerous group. They operate in the shadows, pulling strings, manipulating events to suit their agenda. Your father was one of their fixers. He made problems disappear. And when he left, he took something with him. Something they want back." Jessica felt a cold wave of disbelief wash over her. Her father? A fixer for some shadowy organization? It sounded like something out of a movie, not the life of the quiet, unassuming man she had known. But the look in Sam's eyes told her he wasn't lying. "What did he take?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Sam hesitated, his gaze flicking to Emily and then back to Jessica. "I don't know," he admitted. "But whatever it is, they think you have it. Or that you know where it is. And they're not going to stop until they get it back." The room seemed to spin around Jessica as the implications of his words sank in. Her father's sudden death, the strange phone calls he used to get late at night, the way he would sometimes disappear for days without explanation, it all made sense now. But it was a truth she wasn't ready to face. She turned to Emily, her voice sharp with accusation. "Did you know about this?" she demanded. "Did Dad ever say anything to you?" Emily shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "No," she whispered. "I swear, Jess, I didn't know. He just told me to be careful, to watch out for that symbol." He never told me why Jessica wanted to believe her, but the doubt was already creeping in. How could Emily not have known? How could she have kept something this big from her? The questions burned in her mind, but there was no time to dwell on them. Sam stepped forward, his voice urgent. "We need to move," he said. "They're watching this place. If they think you know something, they'll come for you." Both of you, Jessica felt a surge of panic, her mind racing as she tried to process everything. "What are we supposed to do?" she asked, her voice rising. "We can't just run. We don't even know what we're running from." Sam's expression hardened, and for the first time, Jessica saw a flicker of anger in his eyes. "You don't have a choice," he said. "If you stay here, you're dead. Both of you. But if you come with me, I can protect you. At least for now." Jessica stared at him, her heart pounding. She didn't trust him, not completely. But what other choice did she have? She looked at Emily, who was still crying silently, her arms wrapped around herself as if trying to hold herself together. Jessica felt a surge of guilt. This wasn't just about her anymore. It was about Emily too. And if staying meant putting her sister in danger, then she had no choice but to go. But before she could say anything, her phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out, her stomach dropping when she saw the notification. It was another email, this time from an address she didn't recognize. The subject line was a single word: choose. Her hands trembled as she opened the message, her eyes scanning the words on the screen. "You have 24 hours, it read. "Bring us what we want, or we'll take it from you. And if you try to run, we'll find you. The choice is yours." Jessica felt a cold wave of fear wash over her. They were being watched. They had been all along. She looked up at Sam, her voice barely a whisper. "They know," she said. "They know we're here." Sam's expression darkened, and he grabbed her arm, his grip firm but not painful. "We need to go," he said. "Now." But Jessica hesitated, her mind racing. If they left, they would be running blind, with no idea who they were up against or what they were really after. But if they stayed, they were sitting ducks, waiting for whoever was behind this to make their move. It was an impossible choice, one that could mean the difference between life and death. And then there was Emily. Jessica looked at her sister, who was still standing in the living room, her face pale and her eyes filled with fear. She couldn't put Emily in danger. She couldn't let her get hurt. But if they ran, they would be leaving behind everything: their lives, their homes, their safety. The weight of the decision pressed down on her, making it hard to breathe. She looked at Sam, her voice trembling. "What if we can't outrun them?" she asked. Sam's expression was grim, but there was a flicker of determination in his eyes. "We don't have to outrun them," he said. "We just have to stay alive long enough to figure out what they want. And then we fight back." Jessica felt a surge of fear and uncertainty, but beneath it, there was something else, a spark of resolve. She wasn't going to let them win. Not without a fight. She turned to Emily, her voice firm. "We're leaving," she said. "Now." But as they moved toward the door, Jessica couldn't shake the feeling that they were already too late. The choice had been made, and the consequences were coming. The question was, would they survive long enough to face them? The stakes have never been higher, and the danger is closing in. What will Jessica and Emily do next? Who can they trust? And what is the truth behind their father's secrets? The answers are coming, but the clock is ticking. Keep watching, because this story is far from over. Jessica, Emily, and Sam moved quickly through the dimly lit streets, the rain soaking through their clothes as they tried to put as much distance as possible between themselves and Emily's apartment. The city felt different now, alive with danger, every shadow a potential threat, every passing car a possible enemy. Jessica's mind was a whirlwind of fear and confusion, her thoughts racing as she tried to piece together the fragments of the nightmare they had been thrust into. Sam led the way, his movements confident and deliberate, but Jessica couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into a trap. Who was he, really? And why was he helping them? She wanted to trust him, but every instinct screamed that there was more to his story than he was letting on. They ducked into an alley, Sam motioning for them to stay quiet as he peered around the corner. Jessica's heart pounded in her chest, her breath coming in short, shallow gasps. Emily clung to her arm, her face pale and her eyes wide with terror. "Jess," she whispered, her voice trembling, "what's going on? Who are these people? What do they want from us?" Jessica shook her head, her own fear mirrored in her sister's eyes. "I don't know," she admitted. "But we're going to figure it out. I promise." Sam turned back to them, his expression grim. "We can't stay here," he said. "They'll be looking for us. We need to keep moving." Jessica nodded, but before she could respond, her phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out, her stomach dropping when she saw the notification. It was another email, this time with a video attachment. Her hands trembled as she opened it, her heart pounding as the video began to play. The footage was grainy, but the image was unmistakable. It was her father, alive and well, sitting in a dimly lit room. He looked older, more worn than she remembered, but it was him. Jessica felt a surge of disbelief, her mind struggling to process what she was seeing. "Dad," she whispered, her voice breaking. The man on the screen looked directly into the camera, his expression grave. "Jessica," he said, his voice low and urgent, "if you're seeing this, it means they've found you. I'm sorry. I never wanted this for you. But you need to listen carefully. What I took from them, it's more important than you can imagine. And they'll do anything to get it back." The video cut off abruptly, leaving Jessica staring at the blank screen, her mind reeling. Her father was alive. All this time, he had been alive. And he had been hiding from the same people who were now after her and Emily. She looked up at Sam, her voice shaking. "Did you know about this?" she demanded. Sam's expression was unreadable, but there was a flicker of something in his eyes, guilt, maybe, or regret. "I didn't know he was alive," he said. "But I knew he was involved in something big, something dangerous." Jessica felt a surge of anger, hot and sharp, cutting through the fear. "You knew?" she snapped. "And you didn't think to tell us?" Sam's jaw tightened, but before he could respond, Emily let out a strangled cry. "Jess," she said, her voice trembling, "look." She pointed to the end of the alley, where a dark figure had appeared, silhouetted against the dim light of the street. Jessica's heart skipped a beat as the figure stepped closer, revealing a man in a black suit, his face obscured by a mask. Sam reacted instantly, pushing Jessica and Emily behind him as he reached into his jacket and pulled out a gun. "Stay back," he warned, his voice low and dangerous. But the man didn't stop. He kept coming, his movements slow and deliberate, as if he knew he had the upper hand. Jessica felt a surge of panic, her mind racing as she tried to think of a way out. But before she could move, another figure appeared behind them, blocking their escape. They were trapped. Sam's grip on the gun tightened, but Jessica could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his eyes darted between the two figures. He was outnumbered, and he knew it. "What do you want?" he demanded, his voice steady despite the danger. The man in front of them tilted his head, his voice cold and mechanical. "You know what we want," he said. "Give us the girl, and we'll let you live." Jessica's heart pounded in her chest, her mind racing as she tried to make sense of his words. The girl? Did he mean her? Or Emily? She glanced at her sister, who was trembling beside her, her face pale with fear. "Jessica," Emily whispered, her voice barely audible, "what do we do?" Before Jessica could respond, Sam stepped forward, his voice firm. "You're not taking them," he said. "Not while I'm still breathing." The man in the mask chuckled, a low, menacing sound that sent a chill down Jessica's spine. "Brave words," he said, "but bravery won't save you." And then everything happened at once. The man lunged forward, his movements fast and precise, and Sam fired, the sound of the gunshot echoing through the alley. Jessica screamed, pulling Emily to the ground as the two men clashed, their movements a blur of violence and desperation. She didn't know who to trust, who to believe. All she knew was that they had to get out of there. She grabbed Emily's hand, pulling her to her feet as they stumbled toward the end of the alley. But before they could reach the street, another figure appeared, blocking their path. Jessica's heart sank as she recognized the face. It was someone she knew, someone she had trusted. "Jessica," the man said, his voice calm and familiar. "You didn't really think you could run, did you?" The betrayal hit her like a punch to the gut, her mind reeling as she tried to process what was happening. How could he be involved? How could he be one of them? But there was no time to think, no time to process. The man stepped closer, his expression cold and calculating. "You should have stayed out of this," he said. "But now it's too late." Jessica felt a surge of desperation, her mind racing as she tried to think of a way out. But before she could move, Sam appeared behind the man, his face bloodied but determined. "Run!" he shouted, his voice raw with urgency. Jessica didn't hesitate. She grabbed Emily's hand and ran, the sound of gunfire and shouting echoing behind them. They didn't stop, didn't look back. They just ran, the weight of the conspiracy pressing down on them, the danger closing in from all sides. But as they disappeared into the night, Jessica couldn't shake the feeling that they were running out of time. The truth was out there, but so was the danger. And if they didn't find the answer soon, it would be too late. The stakes have never been higher, and the danger has never been closer. Who can Jessica and Emily trust? What is the truth behind their father's secrets? And how far will they have to go to survive? The answers are coming, but the clock is ticking. Keep watching, because this story is far from over. Jessica and Emily ran until their lungs burned and their legs threatened to give out, the city's labyrinth of alleys and side streets blurring into a chaotic backdrop of shadows and flickering lights. The sound of pursuit had faded, but Jessica knew better than to think they were safe. The man who had betrayed them, someone she had once trusted, was still out there, and he wouldn't stop until he found them. Sam's final shout to run still echoed in her mind, a desperate plea that had saved their lives but left her with more questions than answers. Who was he, really? And why had he risked everything to protect them? They finally stopped in a deserted parking garage, the cold concrete walls offering a temporary refuge. Jessica leaned against a pillar, trying to catch her breath, while Emily collapsed onto the ground, her face pale and her hands trembling. "Jess," she whispered, her voice breaking, "what are we going to do?" "We can't keep running forever." Jessica didn't have an answer. Her mind was a whirlwind of fear and confusion, the weight of everything they had learned pressing down on her like a suffocating blanket. Her father was alive. The people chasing them were part of something far bigger than she had imagined. And now, someone she had trusted had betrayed them. But as she stood there, trying to piece together the fragments of the nightmare they were trapped in, something clicked. The symbol, the circle with a line through it, had been nagging at her since the beginning. And now, finally, she remembered where she had seen it before. It was on a document her father had left behind, something she had found in his office after his death. At the time, she had thought it was nothing, just a random scribble. But now, she realized it was a clue. She pulled out her phone, her hands shaking as she searched through the photos she had taken of her father's files. And there it was, a faded logo on the corner of a page, barely visible, but unmistakable. It was the same symbol that had been on the letter Emily received, the same symbol that had haunted them since this nightmare began. Jessica's heart raced as she zoomed in on the image, her mind racing to connect the dots. "Emily," she said, her voice urgent, "I think I know where we need to go." Her sister looked up, her eyes wide with fear and hope. "Where?" she asked. Jessica hesitated, the weight of the decision pressing down on her. "Dad's old office," she said. "There's something there. Something he left behind. If we can find it, maybe we can figure out what they're after." Emily nodded, her expression a mixture of determination and fear. "Then let's go," she said. "But Jess, what if they're already there?" Jessica didn't have an answer. But she knew they didn't have a choice. They made their way to their father's old office building, the streets eerily quiet as the rain continued to fall. The building was dark, the windows reflecting the faint glow of the streetlights. Jessica's heart pounded as they approached the entrance, her mind racing with every possible scenario. What if they were walking into a trap? What if the people chasing them were already inside? But they had come too far to turn back now. They slipped inside, the familiar surroundings feeling both comforting and ominous. Jessica led the way to her father's old office, her hands trembling as she unlocked the door. The room was exactly as she remembered it, dusty and untouched, a time capsule of the life her father had left behind. She moved to the desk, her eyes scanning the surface for anything that might help them. And then she saw a small, hidden compartment in the bottom drawer. Her heart raced as she pried it open, her hands shaking as she pulled out a flash drive and a folded piece of paper. She unfolded the paper, her eyes scanning the words written in her father's familiar handwriting. "Jessica," it read, "if you're reading this, it means I'm gone and they found you. I'm sorry. I never wanted this for you. But you need to know the truth. The flash drive contains everything proof of what they've done and what they're planning. Use it to stop them. And whatever you do, don't trust anyone." Jessica felt a surge of emotion, her mind reeling as she tried to process what she was reading. But before she could say anything, the door burst open, and the man who had betrayed them stepped inside, his expression cold and calculating. "I knew you'd come here," he said, his voice calm and familiar. "You always were predictable, Jessica." She stared at him, her heart pounding as she tried to think of a way out. But before she could move, Emily stepped forward, her voice trembling but firm. "You're not going to hurt her," she said. The man chuckled, a low, menacing sound that sent a chill down Jessica's spine. "Brave words," he said. "But you're in over your head, little girl." And then, out of nowhere, Sam appeared, his face bloodied but determined. "You're not taking them," he said, his voice raw with urgency. The man turned, his expression darkening as he faced Sam. "You should have stayed out of this," he said. But now it's too late. The two men clashed, their movements a blur of violence and desperation. Jessica grabbed Emily's hand, pulling her toward the door as the fight raged behind them. But before they could escape, the man who had betrayed them broke free, his eyes locking on Jessica. "You're not going anywhere," he said, his voice cold and final. And then, in a moment of desperation, Jessica did the only thing she could think of. She threw the flash drive at him, the small device clattering to the ground. The man hesitated, his eyes flicking to the flash drive for just a second. But that was all the time Sam needed. He lunged forward, tackling the man to the ground as Jessica and Emily ran for the door. They didn't stop, didn't look back. They just ran, the weight of the truth pressing down on them as they disappeared into the night. But as they disappeared into the shadows, Jessica couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. The flash drive was still out there, and the people chasing them would stop at nothing to get it back. And then, as they turned a corner, they saw him, their father, alive and standing in the middle of the street, his expression grave but relieved. "Jessica," he said, his voice low and urgent, "you need to come with me. There's no time to explain." The final twist hit her like a punch to the gut, her mind reeling as she tried to process what was happening. Her father was alive, and he was here. But was he there to save them or to betray them? The answers are coming, but the danger is closer than ever. Keep watching because this story is far from over. Jessica stood frozen in the middle of the rain-soaked street, her father's face illuminated by the faint glow of a flickering streetlight. He looked older, more worn than she remembered, but there was no mistaking him. Her heart pounded in her chest, a whirlwind of emotions, relief, anger, confusion colliding within her. Emily clung to her arm, her grip tight, as if afraid to let go. For a moment, no one spoke. The rain fell around them, a steady rhythm that seemed to echo the chaos in Jessica's mind. "Dad," she finally said, her voice trembling with a mixture of disbelief and accusation. "You're alive. All this time you were alive." Her father's expression was a mix of guilt and sorrow, his eyes filled with a pain that Jessica couldn't fully understand. "I didn't have a choice," he said, his voice low and urgent. "If they thought I was dead, they'd stop looking. I thought it would keep you safe. But I was wrong. Jessica felt a surge of anger, hot and sharp, cutting through the shock. You lied to us, she said, her voice rising. You let us think you were gone. Do you have any idea what that did to us? To me? Her father flinched, but he didn't look away. I know, he said. And I'm sorry, but I couldn't risk telling you the truth. Not then. Not until I knew it was safe. Emily stepped forward, her voice shaking but firm. What's going on, Dad? She asked. Who are these people? And what do they want? Their father hesitated, his gaze flicking to the flash drive Jessica still clutched in her hand. That, he said, pointing to it, contains proof of something they've been hiding for years. Something that could destroy them. They'll do anything to get it back. Jessica looked down at the flash drive, the small device suddenly feeling heavy in her hand. What's on it? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Her father's expression darkened. Evidence of their crimes, he said. Corruption, manipulation, things that would bring down some of the most powerful people in the world. I took it when I left, thinking I could use it to protect us. But I was wrong. All it did was put you in danger. The weight of his words settled over Jessica like a suffocating blanket. She had spent her entire life chasing success, climbing the corporate ladder, thinking she was in control. But now, she realized how little control she had ever truly had. Her father's secrets, the people chasing them, the danger they were in, it was all part of a game she hadn't even known she was playing. What do we do now? Emily asked, her voice trembling. Their father hesitated, his eyes filled with a mixture of determination and regret. We fight back, he said. We use what's on that flash drive to expose them, but it won't be easy. They'll come for us. All of us. Jessica felt a surge of fear, but beneath it, there was something else, a spark of resolve. She had spent her life running, chasing, trying to prove herself. But now, she realized, the only way out was through. She looked at her father, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her. Then we fight, she said. Together. The next few days were a blur of tension and danger. With her father's help, Jessica and Emily worked to uncover the truth, piecing together the evidence on the flash drive and preparing to expose the people who had been hunting them. It wasn't easy. There were close calls, moments when they thought they had been found, times when the weight of it all threatened to crush them. But through it all, they held on to each other, their bond as a family stronger than ever. Finally, the day came when they were ready. Jessica stood in front of a crowd of reporters, her father and Emily by her side, and revealed the truth. The evidence was damning, the fallout immediate. The people who had been chasing them were exposed, their power crumbling as the world learned the truth. But even as the dust settled, Jessica knew it wasn't over. The people they had taken down were just the tip of the iceberg, and there were others out there who would stop at nothing to protect their secrets. The fight wasn't over. But for the first time in her life, Jessica felt like she was in control. As she stood there, surrounded by the people she loved, she realized something. The truth had cost them everything. But it had also given them something priceless, a chance to start over, to rebuild their lives on their own terms. The story ends here, but the journey is far from over. The truth has been revealed, but the shadows still linger. And as Jessica, Emily, and their father walk away from the chaos, they know one thing for certain: they'll face whatever comes next together. The final twist. The flash drive wasn't the only copy. Somewhere out there, another one exists, waiting to be found. And when it is, the game will begin again. Keep watching, because the story is far from over. And the truth? It's still out there.